All these years on Sunday morning, we've maintained a lively interest in politics, in ethnic America, and in natural America, the West and the wilderness. We asked ourselves, what well-known person could we visit on our 15th anniversary who cares about subjects like those? After a while, we thought of just the right guy. He lives on a mountain in the midst of vastness and beauty. A private man in a quiet place. When he comes down the mountain, suddenly he's Robert Redford, the colossal box office movie star and director. Everybody wants a piece of Robert Redford.
Should I introduce you to our guest?
Yes. Hello. Arturo Ripka. How are you, Arturo? Very nice. How are you? Welcome. No, I haven't even had breakfast yet, you know. I guess I'll eat next week, huh?
You watch a few minutes of this and you think, no wonder he wants to get away from it all.
I wanted to find a place that was going to be the last outpost of development, and this seemed to be it. So I just bought 2 acres in 1961. Bought 2 acres of land for $500. And
You did?
And then I had to wait for 2 years before I could get the money to build my own house, which I did.
You mean you built it with your own hands?
Yep, me and the carpenter and his son. And that's how it all started.
From that beginning, over the years, with the paychecks from his movies, Robert Redford bought 6,000 mountain acres up here and named the place after his first big movie role, Sundance. To really see it, you have to rise above the tree line. Oh, this is lovely and silent. Did anybody live here before you did?
Yes, this area was inhabited by 3 different cultures, beginning with Native American cultures, the early Utes, the Anasazi before that. And they were all burning tribes. And when I came, this land was owned by a sheep herder, and I bought it from a sheep herder whose father had homesteaded this land as part of a geologic survey team in 1910.
Oh. That is as fine a view as I have seen.
Yeah. On a clear day, you can see out about 110 miles. And that, as far as your eye can travel to the horizon line, is the Uinta Mountain Range.
If anybody ever asks me why you don't live in Beverly Hills, now I'll be able to tell them.
You don't have to say, you just have to just stand here and shoot this.
He's still up there.
On a few acres along a river in the valley, Redford made a small ski resort and arts compound with workshops for students of dance and literature and filmmaking.
What this basically is a triangle of buildings that are the center of the art development. Dance rehearsal hall is over there. The screening room is behind me. The idea was to keep the buildings scaled small, not big, on the notion that it's better to have a big idea in a small building than the other way around.
About 40 miles up the valley in Park City, Utah, Robert Redford puts on his annual Sundance Film Festival, which he conceived as a place for new filmmakers to show off their work. He's trying to keep the film festival small, too, but it's growing in spite of it.
Hi, how are you?
Fine. Yeah, nice seeing you again.
To say that the festival is not political would be a mistake. We are, in the sense that we feature films of a political nature that illustrate the frustrations and the crises in those countries. And whenever there's an attempt to snuff politically, to use politics to snuff a point of view, then we try as best we can to come behind it and push that back out in the marketplace and encourage the work to be seen.
A lot of movie stars think it's a good idea to stay out of politics. He thinks it's a good idea to jump in, and he's in with both feet.
We have very strong feelings about the documentary.
Campaigning on film and in person against dams and development in the West, against censorship in the arts, against every kind of chauvinism that drives people apart.
Why is introduced to Gustavo Grab?
Hello.
He's a film director from Chile.
This year, 6 Latin American films were on the Sundance program, and Robert Redford was there to endorse them.
Hey!
Another of his heartfelt causes, human rights for American Indians. 13 Native American films were shown at Sundance a couple of weeks ago.
It's not a culture that depends on the written word. It doesn't have one. Has no written history to fall back on or depend on. So everything pretty much depends on their own mythology, their own rituals that are best usually portrayed through song, art, weaving, and now I'm hopeful, film. I believe that we're now going to see, happily, the first generation of Native American filmmakers. So finally we will have an ability out of that culture to tell their story from their point of view and not have to depend on someone else's point of view.
The sculpture and painting and weaving in his own house is Hopi and Zuni and Navajo.
The art collection just had to do purely with an emotional response to what I felt when I saw it. I started collecting Kachinas in 1966. And the Kachina doll is a spirit. And there are hundreds and hundreds of dolls because there are hundreds of spirits. And each spirit occupies a doll, and the doll represents the spirit. And then the spirit plays a very important role.
Once Robert Redford thought he was going to be an artist himself. Is this in your European art student period?
Yeah. When I was in France, art student in Paris and Italy, and these were just people I knew in the course of travel.
Had you any idea then that you were going to end up in motion pictures?
No. God, no.
When one of his teachers turned from mentor to critic, it broke his 19-year-old spirit.
He said, I'm very disappointed. And I was so crushed by that verdict and too immature to rise above it, that had a lot to do with my not pursuing art with a vengeance, which I had been doing up to that point.
Did there come a moment when you said to yourself, well, I'm not going to be an artist, I'm going to be an actor?
Yeah, there did, but it came long after I was an actor. I held some fantasy out of my head that I would return to art, and I carried that maybe 5 years into my acting career, and then finally one day just looked at myself in the mirror and I said, who are we kidding? This is what you do. This is what you do well and like it. Give up the idea that you're going to maintain this career in art.
I assume this is the tree that makes it the tree room.
This is the tree that...
It's easy to get the impression that the real Robert Redford is not the one we think we know from the movies. In our time with him, he didn't want to talk about movies. He wanted to talk about the big power plant project, which would have polluted the Western air, the project he went up against and helped defeat. In gratitude, a woman who lived on the land gave him a great rug woven in 1883.
So I was just blown away. I mean, when I opened that, when I unrolled it, it's 21 feet by 8 feet. Interesting history is that the navy dye did not exist, and the dark color is actually from the cavalry coats of the officers that were killed by the Utes in the battles and woven into the rug. And if you look closely, you can see the dried blood stains and the actual holes where arrows went in.
Still, it must make your heart beat faster after working for an intense few months or a year on a film to come back to this rather plain and beautiful place.
Every time I come up this canyon, every time I see that and feel it, I realize that I'm not taking it for granted. I'm as excited as I was the first time I saw it.